It was a busy morning at the airport. People were rushing through the doors, rolling their suitcases, checking their tickets, and trying not to miss their flights. In the middle of all this noise and movement, a teenage boy stood quietly near a boarding gate. His name was Jaden, just 16 years old. He held his small backpack tight, looking around nervously. It was his first time flying alone. His hands were shaking, but he didn't want anyone to notice. He whispered to himself, "I just need to get on the plane, and everything will be fine." But things were not fine, not even close. Across the terminal, a man in a pilot's uniform was watching. Captain Reynolds, tall, clean-shaved, and always serious, stood near the staff-only area. He noticed Jaden. His eyes narrowed. The boy looked out of place, a little too nervous, a little too alone. Captain Reynolds walked closer and saw Jaden looking toward a black suitcase left near a chair. Then something strange happened. Jaden stepped forward, then stopped. He stared at the bag, then looked away. But that was enough. The pilot's face changed. He pulled out his phone and called security. "There's a boy near gate 4. He's acting strange. Might be trying to steal a bag, or worse. I need someone here now." Jaden had no idea he was being watched. He just wanted to sit down and breathe. But every seat was full. He stepped away from the suitcase and walked toward the window. Then suddenly, he heard shouting. "Hey, stop right there." He turned. 2 security officers were running toward him. Confused, he looked behind him, thinking they were chasing someone else. But no, they were coming straight at him. One officer grabbed his arm. The other took his backpack. "Wait, what's happening?" Jaden asked. "I didn't do anything." Captain Reynolds appeared behind them, arms crossed. "That's him. I saw him eyeing that black suitcase. Looked like he was about to take it or leave something in it." "I wasn't," Jaden shouted, his voice shaking. "I was just looking for a seat. I swear." But no one listened. Inside a small airport room, Jaden sat alone on a hard chair. His backpack sat on a metal table. 2 officers stood outside the glass wall, watching him like he was a threat. He felt sick. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. He kept saying one thing over and over. "Please, can I call my mom?" But each time, they said, "Not yet." Back in the terminal, Captain Reynolds gave his statement. He looked proud, almost heroic. "I've worked in this airport for 15 years. I know the signs. That boy was acting suspicious. He was nervous, walking near unattended luggage, looking over his shoulder." One officer asked, "Did you see him touch the bag?" "No," the pilot said slowly, "but he was close. And these days, close is dangerous." Inside the room, Jaden's mind raced. What had he done wrong? He hadn't touched the bag. He hadn't spoken to anyone. He had just been nervous because he was traveling alone for the first time. He wanted to scream, but he didn't. He just kept whispering, "Please, I need my mom." Far away, a phone vibrated on a table. A woman picked it up and saw a missed call from an unknown number. She stared at the screen, her heart sinking. She pressed the redial button. The phone rang once, twice. Back at the airport, an officer picked up the call. A cold voice said, "Hello, this is airport security." "Who is this?" The woman's voice was calm, too calm. "This is Major Alia Cross. I believe you have my son." The officer blinked. Mom, can you prove your identity?" The woman didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "Put your supervisor on the phone and tell him not to touch my boy again. I'm on my way." She hung up. Meanwhile, Jaden sat in silence. He thought no one was coming. He thought he'd be forgotten. But he didn't know. His mother wasn't just anyone. She was about to walk into that airport, and everything was about to change. Jaden sat on the cold metal chair, staring at the white wall in front of him. The small airport room felt colder than before. No one was talking to him now. No one had told him why he was being held, and no one was letting him call his mother. He had asked 5 times. Each time, they said the same thing. "We're just checking a few things." But Jaden knew this wasn't just a check. He had seen how the pilot looked at him, like he was dangerous, like he didn't belong. Outside the room, 2 security officers were talking to Captain Reynolds. "I don't like how he looked at that bag," the pilot said again. He was nervous, shifting his feet, eyes moving everywhere. "That's how it starts." One officer nodded. "You sure he was alone?" "Positive," the pilot replied. "No parents, just a kid walking around near someone else's suitcase. We can't ignore that." "But he's just a teenager," the other officer said, a little unsure. "And that's exactly why it's scary," the pilot snapped. "They use young people now to test airport security." Back inside the room, Jaden took a deep breath. He didn't want to cry. He had promised his mom he'd be strong. "This flight is important," she had said that morning. "Just get to Auntie Lena's house and wait for me. I'll join you in 2 days." Jaden had smiled and nodded. He didn't want his mom to worry. But now, everything was going wrong. A different officer came into the room. She looked older and kinder than the others. She placed a water bottle in front of Jaden and sat down. "What's your name, son?" "Jaden Cross." "Where were you going?" "Florida. To my aunt's house." She nodded and looked through a folder. "Why were you standing near that suitcase?" "I wasn't standing there. I was just looking for a place to sit. Every seat was taken. I got tired of standing." She looked at him closely. "You didn't touch it." "No, I didn't even go near it." The officer studied his face. Jaden looked tired, but honest. She wrote a few notes, then stood up. "I'll be back soon," she said gently. "Can I call my mom now?" She paused. "Soon." And then she left. Jaden closed his eyes. He felt like a prisoner. And for what? Just because he looked nervous. Because he was black and alone. He remembered something his mom had told him once. "Some people will judge you before you say a word. You must always stay calm. Let the truth speak for you." But what if no one listens to the truth? What if they already decided who he was? Far away, Major Alia Cross was driving fast. Too fast. Her black SUV moved through traffic like a bullet. Her military ID badge was clipped to her chest. Her eyes were sharp. She wasn't just Jaden's mom. She was a trained officer, a woman with power, with respect, and a long memory. She had warned the world once before. "Never mess with my family." At the airport, the kind officer, Officer Mira, checked the security footage. She slowed the video down, watching Jaden step near the chair with the black suitcase. Then she saw it clearly. Jaden never touched the bag. In fact, he backed away when he noticed it was left alone. He didn't move toward it. He didn't reach for it. She frowned. "Then why did the pilot report him?" she whispered. She walked quickly to the supervisor's desk. "Sir, we might have made a mistake." He looked up. "What do you mean?" "That kid in holding room 3. He didn't do anything. I reviewed the footage. He was just standing near a seat. The bag wasn't his, but he never touched it, never acted strange. The pilot's report, it doesn't match the video." The supervisor leaned back in his chair. "I need to see that." Officer Mira showed him the footage. He rubbed his face. "Dan, we might be in trouble." "Why?" He pointed to the phone on his desk. "That boy's mother just called. She's on her way. And her name, Cross. As in Major Alia Cross." Officer Mira blinked. "The Major Cross. Yep. Then we're definitely in trouble." In the holding room, Jaden still sat quietly. He didn't know what was coming. But outside the airport, a black SUV pulled up at the curb. The driver stepped out, opened the door, and saluted. Major Cross got out slowly, Her boots hit the ground with calm power. She fixed her uniform, adjusted her badge, and walked toward the entrance. People moved out of her way without knowing why. Something about her eyes, her walk, made it clear. She was not here for questions. She was here for answers. The airport entrance doors slid open. People glanced up from their phones. Security guards looked twice. A tall woman in a dark green military uniform walked in with calm, quiet power. Her name tag read, Major A. Cross. Her boots tapped softly on the floor, but the sound felt loud. She didn't look around. She didn't ask for help. She already knew exactly where to go. Behind the glass of holding room 3, Jaden sat with his head down. He had stopped asking to call his mom. No one listened anyway. He felt small, ashamed, alone. A camera in the corner watched him. But the people behind the camera didn't know. His mother was already inside the airport, and she was about to change everything. An officer spotted her near the security desk. "Ma'am, passengers are not allowed in this area without." Major Cross showed her ID. The officer stopped mid-sentence. His eyes grew wide. You're Major Cross." "Yes." "Where is my son?" Room 3, ma'am." "I'll take you. I'll go myself." She walked past him like a storm in slow motion. Meanwhile, Captain Reynolds was still giving his version of the story. "I did my duty. I saw a threat, and I acted," he told the airport supervisor. "Even if that threat was a child?" Officer Mira asked sharply. Reynolds frowned. He looked suspicious. "And yet the security footage says otherwise," the supervisor replied. "I know what I saw." "No, you saw what you wanted to see," Mira said. The pilot turned to the supervisor. "Are you taking her side?" The supervisor didn't answer. Because right then, the door opened, and Major Cross walked in. The room went silent. Even Captain Reynolds looked surprised. Her voice was low and steady. "Which one of you kept my son from calling me?" No one answered. "I asked a question," she said again, slower. "I believe," the supervisor began nervously. "It was standard procedure during the—" "Standard procedure," she interrupted. "To detain a child without evidence, without a phone call, without informing his parent." The pilot stepped forward. "We thought he was a risk." "To whom?" she asked. Reynolds cleared his throat. He matched a profile. He looked nervous. "And being nervous is a crime now." She walked closer, her eyes locked on him. "Did he touch the bag?" "No, but—" "Did you speak to him before calling security?" "No." "Then you assumed, based on nothing but his face and his fear." Reynolds's voice dropped. "I was protecting the airport." "No," she said, her voice like steel. "You were protecting your own fear." Inside holding room 3, Jaden still didn't know she had arrived. He leaned back against the wall, wiping a tear from his cheek. Then the door opened, and there she was. "Mom." He stood up quickly, not sure if it was real. Alia Cross stepped inside and wrapped her arms around her son. For the first time all day, Jaden felt safe. "I'm here," she whispered. "You're okay now." Jaden held her tightly. "I didn't do anything, Mom. I swear." "I know," she said, "and they will know it too." A few minutes later, she walked out of the room with Jaden by her side. Officers stepped out of the way as they passed. The pilot opened his mouth to speak, but the supervisor raised a hand. "Captain Reynolds," the supervisor said slowly, "please step into my office." "But—" "Now." The pilot followed, red-faced and quiet. News of what happened was already spreading through the airport. Some workers whispered to each other, "Did you hear? They arrested her son." Major Cross's son. No way. Others simply watched in silence as she walked by with her hand on Jaden's back. She didn't look angry. She looked focused, like someone who had one goal, and nothing would stop her. At the exit, Jaden looked up at her. "Are we leaving?" "Not yet." she said. "I want their full report. I want their footage, and I want an apology." Jaden stared at her. He wasn't used to seeing his mom like this, not as a soldier, but as a shield. "I'm sorry I didn't call," he said quietly. She smiled softly. "You did nothing wrong. You were afraid. And they made it worse. Now they answer to me." Jaden finally nodded. He didn't know what would happen next. But for the first time all day, he wasn't afraid anymore. Major Alia Cross sat in the office of the airport supervisor. Her eyes were calm, but her voice was sharp like a blade. Across the desk sat Mr. Greer, the airport supervisor, sweating through his shirt. "I want everything," she said. "The footage, the report, the name of every officer who handled my son." "Yes, Major," he said quickly. "We're putting that together." She leaned forward. "And I want the pilot suspended while an investigation is done. Today." Mr. Greer nodded, but he looked nervous. Behind him, Officer Mira stood silently, watching. She agreed with the major. Jaden had been treated unfairly. Too many people had made fast judgments, without facts, without questions. In another office nearby, Captain Reynolds sat alone. He had been removed from duty for the day. His badge was taken, his access card disabled, but he still believed he had done the right thing. "I know what I saw," he told himself. He was acting guilty, but something about Major Cross's face haunted him. It wasn't just anger, it was disappointment that cut deeper than anything. Back in the security room, Officer Mira reviewed the airport system logs. She didn't like what she was seeing. The report that had been filed about Jaden was incomplete. Worse, some of the camera footage had been flagged as lost or corrupted. "How is this possible?" she whispered to herself. She traced the log entries. The footage near Gate 4, the area where Jaden was seen, had a 5-minute gap, exactly the 5 minutes they needed. Mira checked the system users. Only 3 people had access to delete or hide footage. One was the IT manager, the second was the supervisor, and the third, Captain Reynolds. Mira's heart sank. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was beginning to look like someone had hidden the truth. She copied the logs and saved them to a secure folder. Then she picked up her phone and called Major Cross. Downstairs, Jaden sat with his mother in a small waiting lounge. He was quiet, still tired from everything that happened. "Are you angry at me?" he asked. She turned to him quickly. "Never. You did nothing wrong. But I should have stood up for myself. I should have said more." She smiled. "You were calm. You didn't panic. That takes strength. Sometimes silence speaks louder than shouting." Jaden nodded, but deep down, he was still confused. Why did the pilot choose him? What had he done that looked so suspicious? Just being alone. Just being black. Major Cross's phone buzzed. She answered. "Mira." "Yes, ma'am. I think you need to see this. I'm sending a copy of the internal logs now." "What's wrong?" "The footage from the incident. Part of it was deleted. Someone didn't want the full truth to come out." Cross's jaw tightened. Who had access? 3 people. But the only one with a motive is Captain Reynolds. There was a pause. Then Major Cross said, "Email it. I'm coming back in." Back in the security office, Mira was waiting with a flash drive in her hand. She plugged it into a large screen and showed the logs. "You see these timestamps. The camera was working perfectly until right when Jaden walked by. And then it went black, only for 5 minutes, just enough to erase the part that showed he did nothing wrong." Cross stared at the screen. "And Captain Reynolds accessed the system that morning." Mira nodded. At 9:14 a.m., 10 minutes before the footage was deleted. Major Cross's voice grew low. This wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. Later that afternoon, Jaden and his mother sat across from Mr. Greer and the airport's legal advisor. I want a public apology made to my son, Alia said calmly, in writing. With the truth, no excuses. The legal advisor shifted in his chair. Major, we'd like to handle this quietly. Internal correction. No, she interrupted. My son was humiliated. Detained. His rights were ignored. Your staff failed. There will be no silence. Mr. Greer finally nodded. We'll prepare a statement. And one more thing, she added. I want to know who deleted the footage. We're still investigating. No, she said, standing. I am. That night, Jaden sat by the window of their hotel room. He watched planes take off in the dark sky. His mom sat beside him. Do you still want to fly to Aunt Lena's? She asked softly. Jaden thought for a moment. Yes, he said, but only if you come with me. She smiled and pulled him into a side hug. I'll book 2 seats. They sat there quietly, but neither of them knew. The real storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. Because someone was trying to hide something deeper. And soon, they would find out. This wasn't the first time. Major Alia Cross sat at the hotel desk, her laptop open and eyes focused. Jaden was asleep on the couch, a pillow tucked under his arm. He had had a long, hard day. But Alia couldn't rest. Something about what happened didn't feel like an accident. A teenage boy falsely accused at an airport. Footage deleted. A pilot defending his actions without proof. It wasn't just wrong. It felt familiar. Too familiar. She opened an encrypted search system used by the military. One regular people couldn't access. She typed in keywords, false airport accusation, black youth detained, footage missing. More than one report appeared. Some were from smaller airports. Some were buried deep in files. Most had one thing in common. The victims were young, often black, often traveling alone. And the pilots. At least 3 of them had worked with Captain Reynolds at different times. Her heart beat faster. This wasn't just about Jaden. This was a pattern. And no one was doing anything about it. The next morning, Jaden woke up to the smell of eggs and toast. His mom handed him a plate with a smile. How are you feeling? She asked. Better, he said, still confused. She sat beside him. Jay, what happened to you yesterday wasn't your fault. But it may not have been the first time something like this happened. Jaden looked up. What do you mean? I think this pilot, and maybe others, have made a habit of accusing the wrong people. Jaden's eyes widened. You mean like me? She nodded. Exactly like you. Later that day, Officer Mira met Alia in a quiet cafe near the airport. She brought a manila envelope and a worried face. I looked deeper like you asked, she said. And? There were 5 similar reports in the last 2 years. Young black travelers reported by airline staff. All claimed suspicious behavior. All cleared later. But most of them didn't even file complaints. They were too scared or embarrassed. Alia opened the file. Each case was painful to read. One boy had been 14. Another was detained for 7 hours. And then Mira dropped the final detail. In 3 of those reports, the same name shows up again. Alia raised an eyebrow. Captain Reynolds. Mira nodded. He didn't always report directly, but he was either working the same shift, the same flight, or the same gate. That night, Alia stood on her hotel balcony, looking over the city. This wasn't just about protecting her son now. It was about justice. For every child who had been made to feel like a criminal. For every parent who had been left in the dark. She took out her phone and called an old friend, someone with a strong voice in the media. I have a story, she said. One the world needs to hear. The next day, the airport was buzzing with tension. News reporters had arrived. Word had gotten out. Major Cross files complaint against airport pilot. Teen wrongly detained sparks national attention. Inside his apartment, Captain Reynolds watched the news and clenched his fists. They're turning this into something bigger than it is. But deep down he knew it was already big, and it was far from over. Back at the airport, the supervisor called an emergency meeting. They had no choice now. The footage had been recovered from a backup server. It showed exactly what Jaden said from the start. He had simply walked near the bag, looked around for a seat, and sat quietly. Nothing else. No threats. No crime. No danger. The truth was out. Jaden watched the news that night with wide eyes. "Mom, I'm on TV." She smiled. "You are, and you should be proud. But I didn't do anything." Exactly. And that's the story. The story continued to spread. Social media exploded with messages. "This has to stop. How many other kids are treated like this?" Respect to Major Cross for standing up. And quietly, emails began arriving in Alia's inbox. Parents, travelers, even airport workers. Each with a story. Each saying the same thing. "This happened to us too." Back at the cafe, Mira showed her one more file. "This is the one I didn't want to show you earlier," she said carefully. Alia opened it. Inside was a complaint filed 3 years ago. A 16-year-old girl, wrongly accused, detained for hours, and the officer who cleared her. "Officer Mira." "I've seen this before," Mira said quietly. "And I couldn't stop it then. But maybe, with your voice, we finally can." Alia nodded. "Then let's finish what they started." A week had passed since the airport incident. But for Jaden, the memory still felt fresh. He could still hear the pilot's angry voice. He could still feel the cold chair in the holding room. And he could still remember the fear in his chest. The fear of not knowing what would happen next. Now, everyone knew what happened. His name was in the news. The video footage had gone viral. But even with all that, something still didn't feel right. Because sometimes, even the truth doesn't fix the pain. That morning, Jaden and Major Cross were invited back to the airport. The airport authority had arranged a press conference. They said they wanted to apologize publicly, to make things right. Jaden wore a neat shirt and clean shoes. His mother stood tall beside him, dressed in her military uniform. Not for show, but as a reminder of who she was and what she stood for. Inside the press room, cameras flashed. News reporters whispered and scribbled notes. The airport supervisor, Mr. Greer, stepped forward. "We deeply regret the incident involving young Jaden Cross," he said into the microphone. "We recognize that mistakes were made. We are reviewing our staff training, and we apologize to the Cross family for the distress caused." A few people clapped. Jaden stared at the ground. Major Cross kept her arms folded. Then Mr. Greer added, "We also want to thank Captain Reynolds for his years of service, even though this situation was difficult for all parties involved." That was the moment Major Cross raised her hand. "I'd like to speak." She stepped up to the microphone. The room went silent. She looked at the crowd, then at the cameras. "My name is Major Alia Cross. I served this country for 16 years. I've seen war. I've trained soldiers. I've led missions in places most people will never see." She paused. "But nothing hurt more than watching my son be treated like a suspect for simply existing." Jaden looked up. His mother's voice was clear and strong. No amount of reviewing staff training can undo what he felt. And no apology can be considered real if the people responsible are still protected. A few reporters nodded. Others scribbled faster. An apology is not just words. It's action. It's justice. It's accountability. She stepped back. The room clapped, louder this time. But Captain Reynolds, standing at the back, said nothing. His face was stiff, his arms crossed. After the conference, the airport issued a written apology on their website. They promised to review racial profiling policies, improve employee training, add more cameras in blind zones, but they did not suspend Captain Reynolds permanently. They called it a case of poor judgment, not wrongdoing. Jaden saw the post on his phone. He showed it to his mom. They're still protecting him. Aaliyah looked at the screen and nodded slowly. This apology isn't for us. It's to protect themselves. That evening, Jaden sat outside the hotel on a bench, looking up at the sky. His mom joined him. "You okay?" she asked. He shook his head. "They said sorry, but it doesn't feel like they mean it." She nodded. "Because they don't. Then why did we even go?" She looked him in the eyes. "Because the world was watching. And sometimes making them speak is the first step, but not the last." Jaden didn't respond right away. Then he said quietly, "What if it happens again? To me? To someone else?" His mom sighed. "Then we fight again. We speak louder. We stand taller. That's how change begins." Later that night, a message popped up on Aaliyah's inbox. It was from a woman named Danielle Parker. She had seen the video, seen the news, seen the apology. Her message was short. "My son was arrested at Atlanta airport last year. They said he looked like someone on a watch list. He's 13. They never apologized. Can we talk?" Aaliyah read it twice. Then a second message appeared. And a third. More parents. More stories. It wasn't just Jaden. It had never been just Jaden. This was bigger. And now, it was personal. Back at the airport, Officer Mira printed her resignation letter. She had tried to fix the system from the inside, but it wasn't enough. Now she had a new idea. She would help Aaliyah, not as an officer, but as an ally. Together, they would build something new. Jaden looked at his mom as she packed her bag. "Where are we going?" She smiled gently. "Wherever this fight takes us." He grabbed his own backpack. "I'm coming too." She paused and looked at him. "You sure?" He nodded. "You always say I'm strong. Now I want to prove it." She pulled him into a hug. And in that moment, they weren't just mother and son. They were a team. Jaden stood at the front of a large hall. The room was full of reporters, community leaders, parents, and young teens who had all faced what he did. At first, he was nervous. His hands shook a little. But when he looked out at the crowd, he saw his mom standing near the back. Calm, strong, proud. That gave him courage. He stepped up to the microphone and began to speak. "My name is Jaden Cross. I'm 16 years old. A few weeks ago, I was treated like a criminal because I was traveling alone and because of how I look." The room was silent, listening. "I didn't do anything wrong, but I was still blamed. That moment changed my life. But what I didn't know then was that it would also change something much bigger." He turned slightly and pointed. Because of her, all eyes turned to his mother, Major Aaliyah Cross. And for the first time, many people began to understand who she really was. Major Aaliyah Cross was not just a military officer. She was a decorated veteran. She had led rescue missions, trained top soldiers, and advised on national security issues. She had stood in war zones and saved lives. But none of that had mattered the day her son was falsely accused. To the world, she was a hero. But to the pilot and airport staff, she had just been another angry black mother. They hadn't recognized her. They hadn't known her title. They hadn't cared about her uniform or her medals. And that was the real problem. Because justice shouldn't depend on who you are. It should protect everyone the same. After the press conference, stories began spreading faster than ever. News outlets ran headlines. Decorated military mom battles racial profiling after son's arrest. Major Cross speaks out. "My rank didn't matter. My skin did." Teens voice sparks nationwide airport policy review. Airports across the country started opening investigations. Some officials were removed. Others stepped down quietly. And finally, Captain Reynolds was forced into early retirement. Not arrested, not jailed, but his career was over. Still, Alia knew the real work wasn't done yet, because it was never about just one man. It was about the system. Major Cross and Officer Mira started a new project together called Clear Skies. It was a program designed to help young travelers understand their rights, train airport staff to recognize bias and respect all passengers, create a safe place for victims to report injustice without fear. They spoke at schools, colleges, and airports. Jaden joined them sometimes. He talked about his experience. He answered questions from kids who had been scared just like he was. And every time he spoke, he grew braver. Because now, he wasn't just a victim. He was a voice. One afternoon, Jaden was invited to speak on a national talk show. He wore a dark jacket and clean sneakers. The host asked, "How did you feel when you learned who your mother really was?" Jaden smiled. "I always knew she was strong. I just didn't know the world would find out like this." Everyone laughed warmly. The host leaned in. "What's next for you, Jaden?" Jaden paused. "I want to fly." The audience gasped. He continued, "I want to become a pilot. A good one. One who sees people, not fears them." Alia, watching from backstage, wiped a tear. Later that evening, Jaden and his mom sat on a park bench, watching the sunset. Birds flew in the sky above them, free and open. "Do you really want to be a pilot?" she asked gently. Jaden nodded. "Yes, but more than that. I want to change how flying feels for people like me." She smiled and placed her hand on his. "Then that's exactly what you'll do." They sat in peaceful silence for a while. Then Jaden asked, "Mom, do you ever get tired of fighting?" She thought for a moment. "Sometimes," she said softly. "But every time I look at you, I remember why I don't stop." Final scene. At a new airport training center in Atlanta, a large photo hangs on the wall. It shows Jaden and Alia standing side by side, smiling. Below the photo is a quote. "Justice doesn't begin in courtrooms. It begins when someone says, 'Enough.'" Every new airport employee sees that quote on day one. And they learn not just how to keep people safe, but how to treat them with dignity. Because of Jaden. Because of his mom. Because truth has wings. And now, it's flying free.